Hi, everybody. We're bringing back the three question series with the admission office here at Archmere. Excited to have our guest today, Heath Einstein. I want to get this title right, Heath, because it's new. It's fairly new. Vice Provost for Enrollment Management at TCU. Correct? Am I correct there?
You got it, Chris.
All
You're
right.
exactly right.
And we were chatting a little bit before we started recording. We go back to the 2005, 2006 in government relations committees and things like that.
Well, I mean, I don't think either of us are that old, really, but yeah, that's probably true.
Thank you. I am that old. You may not be. That's good for you. Okay. So we have the way the format works. We have three questions that are formatted for Heath, but we will probably have some follow-up questions, and he can certainly go in any direction you want, Heath, with this in terms of words of advice or facts or data or anything like that. So I'm going to get started with the first question. Tell us something about your college. Tell us about something about TCU that you'd want every prospective student or family to know about. How can families learn about this during their college search process?
Well, first of all, Chris, I really appreciate you having me, and you're doing a great service to your families. TCU, Texas Christian University, is a medium-sized private university, research university located in Fort Worth. So there's a lot that folks probably don't know. You might know a little bit on the surface about TCU. Of course, we play at a high level of intercollegiate athletics. People know us for that. It's sort of the front door to the university. But I think what's distinctive about us in terms of our position in the higher ed ecosystem is that we're able to provide students with a very sort of traditional college, quintessentially Americana college experience, right? Beautiful residential campus, all the sorts of activities that you would expect in a college community. But we're also set against the backdrop of one of the great cities in the United States, Fort Worth, Texas, home to about 1 million people, the fastest growing city above 250,000 in the US. The economy here is booming, so it's a great place for students to come and learn. And we're a private university that plays at a high Division I level. So that there really are no trade-offs here, right? If you think of every college that plays in one of those four, what we call power conferences, and then you sort of filter down to the private universities, and then you filter down to the schools that are located in major cities. What's distinctive about us is that we're focused primarily on the undergraduate experience. Okay, so a lot of other schools will have far more grad students than we have. The resources that we have at TCU are really geared towards the undergraduates. So we don't have those trade-offs that you might feel like you have at other institutions. The result of that, Chris, is that we have, by a couple of different measures, the happiest students in the United States. Princeton Review said that a couple of years ago in 2023. And of course, that's just one publication. But there was a study done, this is quite interesting, by a group called resume.io. And what they did is they looked at Instagram feeds of students across the country. And what they determined is that based on the length of students' smiles, our students are happier than students at any other college. And in fact, and they measured this quantitatively, they determined that not only were our students happy, they were so happy that the difference in rating between us and the number 2 school was bigger than the rating between the number 2 and the number 10 school. So our students are really happy. So I say this to you because that makes a real difference in a student's college experience. You want to go somewhere where you're going to be satisfied, where you're going to develop great relationships with faculty, which happens at TCU because, again, geared towards the undergraduates, and our faculty are incredible. And the net result is we have a 93% retention rate. So students are coming back, they're not leaving, and they're just incredibly satisfied with the experience. I would also add that probably what people don't know, because I'm guessing that when you're a parent of a high school senior, you're a high school senior or junior, and you're looking at colleges, you're probably not reading through universities' strategic plans. I know I was not doing that when I was a junior in high school. And in fact, I'm the parent of a high school senior, and of the schools that my daughter was considering, we did not look at any of the strategic plans. Probably a good idea to do that, though, because it gives you a sense of where the university is headed. And I can tell you at TCU, where we're headed is some strategic growth in our enrollment, which we probably will get to in a little bit, but also significant investments in the academic experience here. So we have, as I mentioned, wonderful faculty who are doing cutting edge research. We think creative activities, scholarship, research is important, not just for our faculty, but for our students to be able to engage in. So you could look at what some of our faculty are doing right now across the curriculum. And we have over 100 majors and programs here. So whether it's going to South Africa and working with Rhino Conservancy, as one of our environmental sciences professor does, or whether it's a nursing faculty member who studies health inequities that appear across social classes, or it could be with our ranch management department and the work they're doing on food sustainability, or in our Department of Religion and some of the medieval texts that we've discovered in our own TCU library, ancient texts. There's just incredible academic scholarship that's happening on this campus, and we are doubling down in that over the next 10 years. And that, to me, is incredibly exciting for students who are seeking to be challenged in that way.
Thanks, Heath. I haven't been on campus. It is one of those campuses where you feel an energy. I think because a lot of things are new on campus. The weather's nice. It's sunny. At least the day I went and visited, it was hot. Students are happy and they're moving around a lot. It's not a sit down as much. I'm sure there's students sitting in the library and sitting in study rooms and things like that. But there's usually, I'm going to this, I'm going to that. There's a football game, there's a basketball game, there's a concert, there's an art gallery exhibit opening. There's also, I'm going downtown to watch whatever it is. There's certainly an energy about the place.
Huge energy about the place. I think for better, have a fairly compact campus. So you've been here, Chris. You know that you can walk from one side of the campus to the other in 15 or 20 minutes. We don't have a bus system that takes students from one end to the other. It's not required. And while we will have growth over the next 10 years, we will still be a completely walkable campus. And we are in the city of Fort Worth, but we're in a residential part of town. So we're about 10 minutes from downtown, very easy for students to take advantage of all of the attractions of a major metropolitan area. And by the way, for those who aren't familiar with the Dallas-Fort Worth, what we call Metroplex, you've got Fort Worth on the west side, Dallas on the east side. Those are two major cities that are connected by some suburbs, about an hour downtown to downtown, but two culturally distinct cities at your disposal. And right in between is the city of Arlington, which is where the Dallas Cowboys play and the Texas Rangers. So you're about 25 minutes from major professional athletics as well, and concerts and all that stuff.
Well, here at Archmere, you're probably not making a big pitch by telling them the Cowboys are down there.
Good point. But you can see
days.
the Eagles play every year.
Yeah, 10 days to the Super Bowl here. So there's certainly Eagles fever going on. We're going to shift from TCU specific to kind of industry here with our second question, although you can use TCU as an example, certainly. Tell us about a recent trend you've seen impacting the admission practices at your school. What is the trend, and how has it and how will it continue to affect your school and your admission office?
Chris, there's so much we could talk about as I think about and look around what's going on in higher education. There are a lot of headwinds that face us, whether it's the so-called enrollment cliff that you're certainly familiar with, whether it is changes in FAFSA, the FAFSA simplification, and the impact that the rollout from the federal government had last year, how that's impacted universities, test optional, and so forth. There's a lot we could talk about. But I think a recent trend, and I'll say recent, and I don't mean like in the last year, but over the course of the last, I don't know, decade or more, We have seen the proliferation in early decision. And that is something that you can see college by college. And if you understand how universities are trying to piece this puzzle together, that is putting together an entering class, you can understand foundationally why it's important to have a certain percentage of students you know are going to enroll. I would say for us, how that has manifest is in the first of all, in the adoption of early decision. We were sort of late to the game. We didn't add ED until about 2013. So going into the fall 2014 entering class. That was the first year we had early decision. So we're only a little more than a decade into this. We've since added a second round of early decision. And we made a pretty strong statement early on that we didn't want early decision to be the only way you get into college on our campus, at least. Because there are colleges that will admit 50, 60% of their entering class early decision. And that sends a signal to the market that that's really your shot to get in. Because if you have an applicant pool of 50,000 and you have an entering class of 2,000 and 1,000 of those 2,000 spaces are going to your early decision students, you got, 50,000 kids roughly who are vying for 1,000 spots. I mean, the numbers get pretty wacky. Having said that, the benefit from a college not only is building in that foundational piece of your class, but because many of the students who come via early decision have the means to pay for the institution without knowledge of what financial aid package they're going to get, those students are often helping to defray the cost of all the other students, or many of the other students. And as colleges continue to seek to create socioeconomic diversity on their campuses, you do need to have a certain percentage of your families who can pay much, most, or all of the cost of attendance. So it's a pretty complex matrix to get this all together. For us, how this is played out is we are probably going to have a first year class next fall where 25 to 30% comes in via early decision, which would be on the high end for us. But the good news, as far as TCU and prospective TCU families are concerned, is that as part of the strategic plan that I alluded to earlier, we are growing our enrollment. So while we will be taking more early decision students, we're also taking a lot of students in other rounds too, because we have an entering first year class that the last couple of years has hovered around 2,500, and we're moving towards first year classes that will exceed 3,000 students. And that's a pretty significant difference. The goal is that over the next 10 years, or by the time we get 10 years out, we'll have about 14,900 to 15,000 undergraduate students. That still doesn't put us in the same category as some of the big flagship public institutions, but it does mean an increase of from where we are now, which is about 11,000 undergraduate students. 3,000 to 4,000 more students on a number that starts at 11,000 might not sound like a lot, but it's actually pretty significant and requires a lot of thoughtful planning on campus with respect to dorms and classroom spaces and dining facilities and parking and all of the logistical pieces that you would expect. It also requires careful planning from an enrollment and admissions standpoint. So I say that to sort of put a bow on the, yes, we're increasing the number of students we're bringing in via ED, but we're also at the same time increasing the number of students we're bringing in through early action and regular decision.
I talked to two deans this week with 60% of their classes gone already in rounds of ED1 and ED2, basically they're binding rounds. And I'm thinking about our early action and regular decision candidates who now have 40% of the class remaining to try and gain admission, which, having been on the high school, you understand there's not just one school for one student, but as we talk about our high school seniors who are super attached to certain places, the numbers game is a challenging one to relay to them in the same way you've just relayed TCU to our community in terms of this is how we do things, but there's not just one way in which a school does things.
Yeah. Yeah, and because I've sat where you've sat, I understand it from the family's perspective too. And it's not developmentally appropriate for a lot of students to pick out where they plan to spend the next 4 years of their lives when they are 16 or 17, that there is this maturation that occurs even well into the senior year. And you need that time to really flesh out what it is you're looking for and which community provides the right environment for you in which to achieve your goals.
Yeah, thanks for addressing that, Heath. I appreciate it. Third question. Can you please share something about application reading and decisions that you feel students and families don't truly understand, either in general or something unique to your process at TCU?
I think most families don't fully understand a couple of pieces. One is that context truly matters. When we are reviewing an application, we are not simply saying, student A, you've got a 3.9 GPA, therefore you are admitted because it exceeds our profile. And student B, you have a 3.7 GPA, and you're not going to be admitted because you don't exceed our profile. Student A and student B might have nothing in common with respect to their high school experience, courses that they've taken, courses they had available to them to take, what their home life was like, what their lived experience has been. Have they had to change high schools 3 times because parents moved around for jobs? There are just so many variables that go into it. And so what seems to families like at times a haphazard and almost random process is really anything but. We are contextualizing students. So we're going to take Archmere students and review them against the backdrop of what Archmere was able to offer them. What were the courses they could have taken? What were some of the co-curricular opportunities at the school? What is the surrounding community like? And even students within your community that might have different opportunities in their lives. And we take real time to get to know the students as well as we possibly can, or as well as they're willing to share with us. And so that's why the application is really important. And students can choose to reveal certain things about themselves that they think might impact who they are and how they might present, not just to us as a committee of admission officers, but to our campus community, because we're trying to bring together a representative sample of the world around us. It's why I always say to students, one of the biggest myths in this process is that we're looking for well-rounded students. We're not looking for well-rounded students. We're looking to bring in a well-rounded class of students. The students individually could be completely angular, and that's fine. I would in fact prefer to see students who've done 2 or 3 things with significant depth than a student who's tried to do everything but hasn't really achieved much along the way. So I think that context matters, that it's not random. And then I think it also helps to understand, and this is very hard for people to truly appreciate, is that we wish we could admit everybody. We really do. We are not in this to try to reject as many students as possible. You were very kind to note my new title. For 7 years at TCU, I was the Dean of Admission. I was not the Dean of Denial. I wasn't trying to deny as many students as possible. We want to admit as many students as we can. But there are limitations based on space on our campus, space in our programs, and then how many students are interested in us. Because at the end of the day, selectivity is merely a reflection of popularity, right? It doesn't really tell you like which schools are the best. It just tells you which schools are the most desirable. Those aren't always exactly the same thing. I think we are the best, and I think we are very desirable. But my opinion here doesn't really matter too much. What matters is the opinion of your students and their families. And then the other thing I would mention is there's a concept that we talk a lot about in our world, and that you certainly well know, and that I have a sense that students and families are starting to become more familiar with, and that is institutional priorities. Okay, I know that as I go around and talk to families around the country, high school counselors are now more open about this, that colleges aren't all looking for exactly the same thing, right? So I see behind you posters of Duke, Salve Regina, and Colgate University. Now, those are three really different places. So if you have two applicants from Archmere who apply to those three institutions, it's possible that student A is going to get into one or two or three of them, and student B might get into one, two, or three of them, but they might not be the same. Even though the student's credentials are identical, what Duke, Salve, and Colgate are looking for in a student may be completely different. So I'll give you a concrete example of institutional priorities and how it plays out at TCU. And this is sort of a funny one, but I think it will sort of drive home the point. I noted earlier that we play at a high level intercollegiate athletics. TCU is a member of the Big 12 Conference, the Power Four Conference. We've been in the Big 12 since July 1st, 2012. That's the date on which we officially joined the Big 12 Athletic Conference. Prior to that, we played in the Mountain West Conference, which is considered a mid-major. And when the invitation to join the Big 12 was presented to TCU, everyone, of course, was very excited. And I think the question that we all sort of had to address was, could we compete, right? Like we had been a really good school. Let's take football, for example. We had been a really rock-solid program for over a decade in college football at a mid-major level. In fact, we had broken through and won the Rose Bowl in January 2011. We beat the University of Wisconsin. Major upset. We got a lot of press from it, and it was great. But could we do that on a annual basis and on a weekly basis? Could we game in and game out defeat programs representing schools that were much bigger than TCU? Nobody gave a thought as to what the size of our marching band was. Okay? Now, in 2011, 2012, we barely had enough marching band members to spell out TCU on the football field. But if we're going up against University of Texas and University of Oklahoma, these were at the time at least members of the Big 12, big programs, major programs, big marching bands, we would look really pitiful against them. So what did we do? We started offering stipends to students to play in the marching band. And we, as we were going through applications for admission, we would flag every student who played in the marching band, and it gave them an advantage in the admission process. And if they were admitted, they automatically got a $3,000 stipend, even if they weren't a music major. That if they participated in marching band, they would get a stipend. Lo and behold, the net result is our marching band grew. So that's an example. It's kind of a silly example, but there are all sorts of institutional priorities that universities have that you may or may not be aware of. Some schools are really open about what they're looking for, right? They'll come out and say, we're trying to grow X, Y, or Z program, and we're going to have more space than ever before. But sometimes you're not going to know what those priorities are. There are a couple of places you can look to research. One is, as I noted earlier, a strategic plan. Pretty much every college is going to have a strategic plan, whether it's something that was just published in the last 6 months or that's something that's 5 years old. It will give you some indication as to how the university is using its resources or trying to trying to bring in resources and apply them toward a particular area or another. So that can help you understand it. The other place I would encourage students to go is something called the Common Data Set. Every college submits information annually to the federal government through a survey called the Common Data Set. And as the name would suggest, it is a set of common data that all colleges present. And almost every school will put this up on their website. Usually it's associated with the institutional research arm of the university. Sometimes it's housed elsewhere. Sometimes it's buried, but if you look hard enough, you could probably find it. And there's a lot of information in there that will help students and parents and guardians understand what direction a university is headed.
Heath, thanks a lot. I appreciate it. I'm going to do a quick summary. Is that okay?
Yeah, please do.
So at TCU, and I'm glad you threw this number out. We have a lot of students who I want to go to a happy place. I want to go to a great community. And we always send them, obviously a feeling and a reputation goes far, but we send them to that first year retention number right away. Because if I'm not happy, I'm not paying the bill for a second year. So your 93% retention rate, for those of our families who don't know what that is, students returning for year 2, okay, and 93 is phenomenal. You were very eloquent in sharing how big the smiles are on campus. Okay, that'll also go a long way in telling me how happy students are in your community. You emphasized the use of binding early decision 2, perhaps as a tool for enrollment for a lot of enrollment deans, directors, vice presidents at different schools. Okay, as a trend that's moving forward, and we're definitely seeing that. That's schools that did have early decision, if they're able to, are taking a larger portion of their class sometimes, and more schools moving toward early decision if they can in their process. And we've seen those numbers inch up over the last few years in terms of our students' willingness to do a binding application as well. Very, very eloquent in talking about wanting to get to know the whole student, reviewing the student in context, but also taking into account institutional priorities with a very interesting band analogy there. That was really great. We love when people can understand what you're saying by using an example. I've got one follow-up question, then we'll wrap things up. We'll let you get on your way. What time? You're an hour behind us, right?
Yeah. It's about 20 minutes to here.
Okay. All right. So you talked about revealing things in the application. So if that's a piece of advice, I think I would be remiss if I didn't ask for our applicants, what are the ways in which they can reveal certain things that you might want to know about them?
I think there are a couple of ways to do that. One, and probably the most obvious, is through their personal statement. Every student is given an opportunity to share something about themselves that they would like us to know. And, I'm always careful about this, Chris, because I'm sensitive to the idea that students sometimes feel, and maybe it's because of things that people like you or I say, that make them feel like they need to present themselves in a particular way, that they need to show that they have overcome some significant trauma in their life. So that there's like a woe is me story. And I don't want students to feel like they have to present themselves in that way. Now, if there is something that has occurred and they think it's important for us to know about it, and that something is negative and is something that they've overcome, that's fine. But I don't think that trauma needs to be currency in this process, right? Mm-hmm. So I just want to start by saying that. Whatever they want to tell us, a personal statement, otherwise known as the college essay, is a great way to share that. Many colleges will also ask students to respond to a couple of custom questions on the application. Something like, why do you want to go to fill in the blank university? That's an opportunity to share something about yourself. In fact, I think the key to responding to those questions is not to just regurgitate something about the university that, of course, the school already knows. It's more about how can you present alignment between who you are and how the university affords students certain opportunities. Another place that it can happen is in letters of recommendation, which, of course, the students aren't themselves writing, but the more that they can communicate who they are to their teachers and their counselors, the more accurate and perhaps deeper a depiction of the student we're going to see through the eyes of some other individuals. So I think that's a good place. And then finally, there are some optional components that some colleges have. So I'll use TCU as an example. We have something on our application called the freedom of expression. We've had this since long before I arrived at TCU 13 years ago, and I suspect we're going to have it long after I'm gone because it's unique to us. And what it is an opportunity for students to just tell us anything else they'd like to in whatever format they would like. So we used to say, take an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper and tell us something else that you'd like. Well, we're well past the days of people using 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper, right? But we say the only limit here is your creativity. So we will have students who submit poetry. We'll have students who will submit a YouTube clip of them performing some original composition. We'll have some artwork that students submit. They don't need to submit anything, but if they want us to get to know them, it's a creative outlet for them. Because again, we're trying to get to know students in as many of their 360 degrees as they're willing to share with us.
That's wonderful. And that's advice that I can see us sharing this with some of our students, because we talk about reflection in terms of learning self and then projecting that forward and making that, and you used a term I didn't, present an alignment, the fit, I fit you because I'm looking for this, because I know this about myself and I know this about your campus. And we honestly believe that story connection can be a value added toward admission decisions, because they've shown that they've invested in themselves, but they've also shown that they've invested in your case, TCU, to understand why they want to be on your campus.
Exactly right. Nailed it.
Folks who are watching from Archmere, this is why I've been trying to get Heath to come to campus for a half a dozen years now. He has an open invitation to any panel he wants to. And Heath, I'm going to continue to email you to try and get you up here. At some point, we'll succeed. The last thing I want you to do, because I know every Big 12 school has their little hand gesture,
Yes.
right? Or their symbol. So can you show us what the horned frog symbol looks like?
Absolutely. And I will preface this by saying I spent 8 years as a college counselor, as you well know, Chris. And in that time, much like you, I got to travel around the country and go to lots and lots of different college campuses. I've counted, and I've been to about 250 colleges. I'm sure you've been to way more. And until I came to TCU, I did not fully appreciate what a connected campus looks like. Everyone here loves being here. They're drenched in purple. Our school colors are purple and white. Purple's the color of royalty. And I mean, like I talked about earlier, having the happiest students, it's really easy to see why when you step foot on campus. So our hand sign it looks like this. And so the way to do it is what we say is you take a peace sign and then you make it angry. And you got to make sure to get it all the way down, because there's another school nearby that if you don't go far enough down, you'll be confused with that institution to our east. But you throw up the frog sign and you say, "Go Frogs." And when you are around campus, everyone does that. Everyone says, "Go Frogs." If you see somebody wearing a TCU hat in the airport, or they see you wearing a TCU hat, they will say, "Go Frogs." And there's something really special about being on a campus where everyone's just so excited to be here. And it really has not a lot to do with football, because we could be having a great football season or a not great football season, and people are just as enthusiastic being here. And that's the sign, I think, of a great college community.
Heath, thanks a lot for spending some time with you. I know you're a very busy person, but we really appreciate learning a little bit more about TCU and your willingness to talk just about the profession and try to help our families in general. So thank you very much for your time, Heath.
You're welcome. And I'm going to take you up on that offer and come visit.
I hope so. I hope so.